Hey everyone, and welcome. We all know how easy and convenient online shopping is, right? But have you ever stopped to think about the real cost behind it? In this explainer, we're going to dig into the environmental and social footprint of e-commerce and look at a really specific framework that helps us measure it all. All right, let's get into it.
So when you click that Buy Now button, you see the price tag. Easy. But what about all the hidden costs? I'm talking about the massive amounts of energy powering the website's data centers, or the fuel and all that packaging that gets the item to your house. There's a whole story there. So, how do we actually get the full picture?
Well, the answer really comes down to standardization. And that's where the SASB standards come in. Now, these are maintained by the International Sustainability Standards Board, or the ISSB, and they basically create a common language for companies to talk about the sustainability issues that really matter to their bottom line. It means we can finally compare apples to apples when we look at these companies.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll break down what these standards are all about. Then, and this is key, we'll define exactly who they apply to in the e-commerce world. After that, we'll get into the 5 main things these companies have to report on. And finally, we'll wrap up with why any of this really matters to you, me, and everyone else.
Right, so before we can even start talking about e-commerce, we got to understand the tool itself. Let's do a quick look under the hood at how a SASB standard is built.
What's so smart about this is that it's like a universal blueprint. Every single one of the 77 different industry standards is built on these 5 pillars. It all starts by describing the industry, who's in, who's out. Super specific. Then it zeroes in on the few sustainability topics that are actually financially important. Next, it gives them specific metrics like, kilograms of CO2 to measure how they're doing. It even provides technical rules for how to do the measuring, and finally it adds activity metrics, like number of packages shipped, so we can fairly compare a giant company to a smaller one. It's a really thorough system built for real comparability.
Okay, and that brings us to a really important question. Who exactly does this e-commerce standard apply to? Because the rules are super specific and for a very good reason.
So the official definition, which comes from what's called the Sustainable Industry Classification System, or SICS, it covers 2 main types of businesses. Online marketplaces, platforms where tons of different people can sell their stuff, and retailers or wholesalers that are only on the web. It's designed for that truly digital, global marketplace.
And this slide just illustrates that pure play idea perfectly. The SICS classification is really targeting businesses that are fundamentally online. It very deliberately leaves out the physical brick-and-mortar stores even if they have a website. Manufacturing is out too. And you might ask, why? Well, it's because those industries have their own separate standards that are tailored to their own unique impacts. This focus makes sure we're always comparing like with like.
So now that we're clear on who is being measured, let's get into the interesting part. What is actually being measured? The standard zooms in on 5 key topics that are the most financially important for these online businesses.
And here they are. You've got the physical footprint of their data centers, how they handle our data for privacy and ads, how well they secure all that data, how they manage their people, and of course, the real-world impact of their packaging and shipping. Let's just touch on each one real quick.
First up, hardware. An e-commerce website might feel like it exists in the cloud, but that cloud is powered by very real servers in very real data centers. And these places consume an insane amount of energy and water just to stay cool. So the standard makes companies report their total energy and water use, which really shines a light on just how resource-hungry they are.
Next, data privacy. This is a big one. E-commerce companies use our data to show us ads. But where's the line? This standard asks a super direct question. How many of your users had their information used for something other than the main reason they gave it to you, like for advertising? It's a simple number that tells you a whole lot about their business model.
And right alongside that is data security. The whole business model falls apart if we don't trust them with our credit card numbers. A single data breach can completely wreck that trust and kill their market share. So the standard brings transparency by making companies report the number of data breaches they've had and exactly how many people were affected.
E-commerce is also all about people. The competition for talented tech workers is just fierce, and having a lot of people quit is a huge risk to a company's stability. So this standard looks at how they manage their teams by measuring turnover rates and also the diversity of their workforce, from the ground floor to the executive suite.
And finally, we're back to that box on your doorstep. Getting all those products to millions of people means these companies are exposed to risks like rising fuel costs or carbon taxes. So this standard measures the total greenhouse gas footprint of all those shipments, directly connecting that digital click to its real-world carbon cost.
So we've gone through the who and the what. Now let's talk about the why.
why does having a common set of rules for all this stuff actually matter in the real world? The real power here is in the comparison. For investors, it lets them see past all the slick marketing. For a company, it's a great tool for spotting risks, like a crazy high water bill for your data centers, and finding ways to innovate. For us, as consumers, it gives us a peek behind the curtain at the real impact of where we choose to shop. At the end of the day, it's all about driving accountability.
What this all really boils down to is that concepts like privacy or environmental impact, they can feel a little vague, right? But what this standard does is it turns those fuzzy ideas into cold, hard numbers. Gigajoules of energy, number of data breaches, metric tons of CO2. And having that data empowers all of us to make much smarter decisions. And that brings us to the final question. And this one's really for you. Now that you know that this kind of detailed data can and does exist, who are you going to hold accountable? The companies you buy from? The platforms you use? The choice and the power that comes with it is increasingly in our hands. Thanks for watching.